I'm standing in my empty living room right now, looking at the spot where my favorite armchair used to be. 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. Nothing prepares you for the moment your own child looks you in the eye and tells you you're worthless. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been told you don't matter by the people who are supposed to love you most, please hit that subscribe button. Share this if it resonates. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone, and maybe my story can help you see the signs I missed. My name is Margaret, I'm 67 years old, and for the past 15 years, I've been living with my daughter Sarah and her husband Marcus. After my husband died, they insisted I move in. "Mom, we need you," Sarah said. "Who else is going to help with the kids when they come along?" But the kids never came, and somewhere along the way, I stopped being needed and started being tolerated. I contributed my monthly pension, $1,200, to help with groceries and utilities. It wasn't much, but it was what I had. I cooked dinner most nights, did the laundry, kept the house clean. I told myself I was helping. I told myself I belonged there. The lottery ticket was my little rebellion. Every Friday, I'd take $5 from my grocery money and buy a ticket at the corner store. Same numbers every week, birthdays and anniversaries that mattered to me. I'd been playing those numbers for 8 years. Sarah knew about it. She'd roll her eyes and call it Mom's gambling problem, but she never objected when I'd scratch off the occasional $5 winner and put it toward groceries. What she didn't know, what I never told her, was that I'd put both our names on the ticket. Every single week for 8 years. In my mind, we were family. If I won, we'd all win together. The morning it happened, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Sarah came down, staring at her phone with this strange expression. Marcus was right behind her, and they were both completely silent. I asked if everything was okay, and Sarah just held up her phone. "Mom, what are our lottery numbers?" I rattled them off without thinking. I'd said them so many times they were like a prayer. That's when Sarah screamed. Actually screamed. Marcus grabbed the phone and started laughing. This wild, hysterical sound I'd never heard from him before. $33 million. Our numbers had finally come up. For about 10 minutes, we were all hugging and crying and planning what we'd do with the money. Sarah talked about quitting her job. Marcus mentioned buying a bigger house. I was just happy. For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of something important in their lives. Then Marcus asked the question that changed everything. "So Mom, where's the ticket?" I went to my bedroom and pulled it from my jewelry box, where I'd kept it safe like I always did. But when I handed it to them, I watched their faces change as they read it. Sarah's smile disappeared completely. "Why are both our names on here?" she asked, her voice flat. I explained about wanting us to be in it together, about how family shares everything. The silence that followed felt like ice water in my veins. Marcus spoke first. "Well, we'll need to figure out how to handle this legally." "Handle what?" I asked. Sarah looked at me with eyes I'd never seen before, cold and calculating. "Mom, let's be realistic. You didn't buy this ticket with your own money. You used grocery money that came from our household budget. Technically, this win belongs to the household." I felt something break inside my chest. "Sarah, honey, I've been buying these tickets with my own pension money for 8 years. You know that." "Your pension money that you contribute to our expenses," Marcus interjected. "Money that helps pay for the roof over your head and the food you eat." The next hour was the longest of my life. They sat me down like I was a child and explained how things were going to work. They'd take care of the lottery claim since they were younger and better with financial matters. They'd make sure I was taken care of. But I needed to understand that this was primarily their windfall. "Besides, Mom," Sarah said, her voice gentle but her words like knives, "what would you do with $33 million? You're 67. You don't drive anymore. You don't even understand how to use the internet properly. This money can do so much more good in younger hands." I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind her that those were my numbers, my ritual, my tiny act of hope every single week. But they had the ticket now, and I felt so small and confused that I just nodded. The next 2 days were a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. They drove to the lottery office without me, saying it would be easier if they handled everything. When they came back, they had a check for $33 million with both their names on it. That night at dinner, Marcus raised his glass of champagne they'd bought with MY winnings, and made a toast. To new beginnings, he said. To finally having the freedom to live the life we've always wanted. Sarah was glowing. I can't believe we don't have to worry about money anymore. No more budgeting, no more scraping together grocery money, no more. She stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. Well, you know what I mean. But I did know what she meant. No more depending on my pension. No more needing my small contributions. No more needing me at all. The conversation I'd been dreading came the next morning. Sarah sat on the edge of my bed, holding a cup of coffee, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. Mom, Marcus and I have been talking, and we think this is the perfect opportunity for you to finally have some independence. My heart started racing. What do you mean? Well, you always talk about that senior community across town, Sunset Gardens. They have studio apartments, meal plans, activities. You'd have your own space, your own life. We looked into it, and we can cover the first year's rent. The first year's rent. Out of $33 million, they were offering to pay for 1 year in a senior facility. But Sarah, this is my home too. We're family. Her face hardened. Mom, let's be honest. You're not happy here. You're always complaining about feeling useless, about not having purpose. This way, you can be around people your own age, have your independence. I never said I was useless. But you feel it, don't you? Marcus and I don't need you to cook or clean anymore. We can afford to hire people for that now. Your pension money, she paused, searching for the right words. We don't need it anymore either. There it was. The truth served cold on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't family anymore. I was a burden they could finally afford to eliminate. When do you want me to leave? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Well, we were thinking by the weekend. We already called Sunset Gardens, and they have an opening. 3 days. After 15 years of sharing their home, raising Sarah from childhood, being there through her father's death, her struggles in college, her wedding day, I got 3 days' notice. I spent those 3 days in a strange fog, packing my life into boxes. Sarah and Marcus were busy making plans, new cars, a bigger house, a European vacation. They'd transformed from the struggling young couple I'd been helping to people who spoke casually about spending more on a single dinner than my monthly pension. The morning I was supposed to leave, I was in the kitchen making my last cup of coffee in that house when I remembered something. The lottery ticket. In all the excitement and planning, I'd forgotten about a detail that suddenly seemed very important. I went to my bedroom and pulled out the folder where I kept all my important papers. Birth certificates, social security documents, insurance policies. And there, in a plastic sleeve, was a photocopy of the lottery ticket I'd made years ago for my records. I stared at it for a long time, reading the fine print I'd never paid attention to before. The part about how winnings are distributed when multiple names appear on a ticket. The part about equal ownership regardless of who purchased it. But that wasn't what made my hands shake. It was the signature line at the bottom. The one that legally validated the ticket. I'd signed it. Only I'd signed it. Sarah and Marcus hadn't been there when I filled out the back of the ticket 8 years ago. They hadn't been there when I carefully wrote both our names on the front. They weren't there when I signed my name on the bottom, validating it as a legal document. Under lottery rules, the signature validates ownership. Without my signature, their names on the front meant nothing. With my signature, I owned the ticket completely. Their names were just my designation of who I intended to share with. But they didn't know that. They'd been so focused on getting to the lottery office and claiming the prize that they'd never looked at the legal implications. And in their rush to cash in, they'd committed fraud by claiming a prize with someone else's signature. I sat on my bed, looking at this photocopy, and for the first time in 3 days I smiled. The moving truck was supposed to come at noon. At 11:30, there was a knock at the door. I answered it to find 2 very serious-looking people in suits. Mrs. Margaret Wilson? One of them asked. Yes. I'm Detective Rodriguez, and this is Agent Chen from the Lottery Commission. We need to speak with you about a prize claim from 3 days ago. My heart was pounding, but I invited them in. Sarah and Marcus appeared from the kitchen, their faces pale. There seems to be some irregularity with the lottery claim filed on Monday, Detective Rodriguez explained. The ticket was signed by Margaret Wilson, but the claim was filed by Sarah and Marcus Henderson. Can you explain this discrepancy? What followed was the most awkward 20 minutes of my life. Sarah and Marcus scrambled to explain that it was their ticket, that they'd purchased it, that there must be some mistake. But when Detective Rodriguez asked them to provide proof of purchase, receipts, bank records, anything showing they'd bought lottery tickets, they had nothing. I, on the other hand, had 8 years' worth of bank statements showing $5 withdrawals every Friday. 8 years of corner store receipts I'd kept in a shoebox. 8 years of documentation proving I'd been the one buying tickets with those exact numbers. Mrs. Wilson, Agent Chen asked, did you authorize Sarah and Marcus Henderson to claim this prize on your behalf? The room went completely silent. Sarah was staring at me with a look of panic I'd never seen before. Marcus was clenching and unclenching his fists. No, I said quietly. I didn't authorize them to do anything. They took the ticket from me and filed the claim without my knowledge or consent. What happened next was a blur of legal terminology and official procedures. The Lottery Commission froze the prize pending investigation. Sarah and Marcus were informed they were under investigation for fraud, and I was told I'd need to come to the lottery office the next day to file the proper claim. After the officials left, the house was dead silent for about 5 minutes. Then Sarah exploded. How could you do this to us? We're your family. Am I? I asked. Because 3 days ago, you told me I was useless. You told me you didn't need my pension money anymore. You told me to leave. We never said you were useless, Marcus protested. You didn't have to. You made it clear that the only value I had in this house was the money I contributed. And now that you thought you didn't need it, you didn't need me either. Sarah started crying. Mom, we were just excited. We weren't thinking clearly. Of course we want you here. Of course you're family. Funny how I became family again the moment you realized you might lose the money. That night, they didn't mention Sunset Gardens. They didn't mention me leaving. Instead, they made my favorite dinner and kept talking about our plans for our money. But I'd already made my decision. The next morning, I went to the lottery office alone. I filed the proper claim, provided all my documentation, and signed all the necessary papers. The $33 million was legally mine. But I didn't keep it all. When I got home that afternoon, Sarah and Marcus were waiting in the living room, looking like they hadn't slept. I sat down across from them and pulled out the paperwork. The money is mine, I said simply. Legally completely mine. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. Sarah was crying again. But, I continued, family takes care of family, even when family forgets what that means. I slid a check across the coffee table. $1 million. Made out to both of them. This is your share, I said. It's more money than most people see in a lifetime. Use it wisely. Sarah picked up the check with shaking hands. Mom, I don't understand. You could have kept it all. After what we did. I could have. But then I'd be just like you were 3 days ago, someone who thinks money is more important than family. I stood up and walked toward my bedroom, then turned back. I'm keeping this house. If you want to stay, you can stay. But things are going to be different now. We're going to remember what it means to be a family. And if you ever again tell me I'm useless or that you don't need me, you'll be the ones looking for somewhere else to live. Marcus was staring at the check. Margaret, we were so sorry. We don't know what came over us. I do, I said. Money came over you. The idea that you suddenly had choices made you forget who was there for you when you didn't have any. That was 3 weeks ago. The $32 million I kept is sitting in accounts I control completely. I've bought this house outright. I've set up college funds for the grandchildren I might someday have. I've donated to the senior center, where I volunteer twice a week. Sarah and Marcus are still here, but they're different now. Sarah cooks dinner twice a week and actually asks about my day. Marcus fixed the leaky faucet in my bathroom without being asked. They seem to understand that I'm not just the elderly woman they're taking care of. I'm the matriarch of this family, and I've earned some respect. The $1 million changed their lives. Marcus quit his job and started the consulting business he'd always dreamed of. Sarah went back to school to become a therapist. They travel, they're happier, and they remember to include me in their happiness. But I think the real change wasn't the money. I think it was the moment they realized they'd almost lost something irreplaceable. Not the lottery winnings, but their relationship with me. And I almost lost something too. My sense of my own worth. For years, I'd let them make me feel like I was just an obligation. Like I was lucky they tolerated me. I'd forgotten that I was the one who raised Sarah, who taught her right from wrong, who was there for every important moment of her life. I'd forgotten that I had value beyond what I could contribute financially. The hardest part wasn't their betrayal. It was realizing how little I'd been valuing myself. Now, when I make my coffee in the morning, I don't do it quietly, trying not to wake anyone. I make it because I want it when I want it. When I buy groceries, I buy what I like, not just what fits the budget. When I speak, I don't apologize for having opinions. I still play the lottery every Friday. Different numbers now, dates that matter to my future, not just my past. And the ticket has only one name on it, mine. Because I learned something important that day when I thought I'd lost everything. The moment you start believing you're useless, you give other people permission to treat you that way. But the moment you remember your worth, you can change everything. If someone in your life is making you feel invisible, if you're being told your contributions don't matter, if you're questioning your own value, remember this story. Remember that you have power, even when you feel powerless. Remember that you deserve respect, especially from the people who are supposed to love you. And sometimes, the best way to show someone how much they need you is to be prepared to walk away. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. And subscribe for more real stories about finding strength in the moments that test us most. Share your own story in the comments. I read every single one. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to figure out how to be family to each other. And sometimes it takes almost losing everything to remember what that really means.